Have you ever thought about the power of the tongue? And if leaders would misuse their tongue, would be the impact? We've seen leaders who've misused their tongue to the repercussion and turning the whole country into anarchy. Welcome. This is Marketplace Media, an online platform that engages, equips, and encourages believers to say inawezekana. If this is your first time being here, we encourage you to hit the subscriber button so that every time when you upload a new video, YouTube will be able to notify you. By the way, do you know that you can be able to live stream? If you're looking for, if you have a burial, you have a graduation, you have an ordination, you have a bash, why don't you talk to Marketplace Media, on the number that is 0706 566, so that you can subscribe. Let me take the number again: 0706 566 555. And please, this is your first time in here, we encourage you to hit the subscriber button as we learn today on the leader's tongue. This is conversation on leadership, because conversations on leadership are very important, and it is very important for us to pause and ask ourselves, when leaders are talking, how is it that they talk? Well, they just don't talk for the sake of talking. There is a way they message there. There is a way that they talk. And that will be the whole discussion that you're going to have here. And so we encourage you to pick up a note, because there's a lot that you're going to learn on how leaders talk. So how do leaders talk? You remember the Bible says that the tongue has the power of life and death. The tongue has the power of life and death. That is very important for us to be able to realize, even as we discuss this. Now, as a way of introduction, it is somebody said, and that must be the book of James, and I want us to read the book of James. The book of James, very, very important, because James talks a lot about James chapter 3 verse number 5. The Bible says, in the same way, now look at this, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. Okay, let's read. Can we do another version here? Let's do NIV. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set in fire. Let's do the New Living. It says, so a tongue is a small thing, but what enormous damage it can do. Enormous damage. Please mark that. There is a version that I love called the Contemporary English Version. It says, our tongue as small too, yet they brag about big things. It takes only a spark to start a forest of fire. Tongues are very powerful. One of the ways in which Satan uses to bring leaders down the quickest is through the tongue. The wisest person once said the tongue has the power of life and death. And with the mouth, we can do two things. We can build, you can build up things. We can be able to talk well about people. We can be able to paint people as kings. We can make kings, we can make pastors, we can be able to talk very good things, but again with this tongue we can also bring others down. And so this means as a leader it's very important for you to tame your tongue. Very important to tame your tongue, that you don't speak things for the sake of speaking, but you tame your tongue. And it is one of those critical disciplines of any leader, whether you are a politician, whether you are working in church, whether you're working in the marketplace. It is very important for you to cultivate the discipline of taming your tongue. Now, a lot of leaders think, and this is a misconception, that a leader is born to talk. And maybe this explains why when leaders go to the meeting, they dominate with talking, and they think that it is the preserve of the Julia to reason. Okay, and it is very important for us to understand that it should be the other way around. The leader should be reasoning. Have you noticed, by the way, that we have very few listeners? And when the leaders are talking, sometimes they are very ruthless, they are very reckless. They talk things for the sake of talking. They don't care what they are saying. And sometimes we've seen their recklessness and ruthless words have plunged nations into anarchy, into bloody wars. One reckless word, brothers and sisters, can bring damage to families. It can wreak havoc to organization. It can sink a whole nation into bloodless wars. And so this means that it is very important for us to be able to be very, very careful with our words, because words are powerful. Now, as a leader, there are several observations that I've made. Number one, that there are times we've said things that we should not have said. There's times we've said things we should not have said those things. And some of the things that we say and we should not have said them is when we complain instead of creating solutions. And a lot of us have actually landed into trouble because of things that we've said but we should not have said. There's information that you know about somebody, and you just spit it out. Your boss has entrusted you with a secret, you just let it go. These things that you should not say, but you go ahead and say them. Your pastor your member has entrusted you with a secret, and has confided into you, but as a pastor you just go ahead and speak it. You're working with a medical, the patient entrusts you with a secret, they are sick of ABCD, and they trust that you're not going to reveal that, but you go ahead and do it. Things where we should not have said, but we go ahead and do it. And this actually lands us into big time trouble. Another observation that I've also seen, and by the way, a lot of us say things that we should not say because we are looking for affirmation. We want to look special. We suffer from insecurity. If you see somebody, those people who spill beans, they speak anything, they go in a meeting before the meeting is even over, even before the decision is communicated, they have already pass the information to an authorized person or maybe to the affected person, is simply because of what we call security issues, insecurity, because they feel if they break the news then they are going to be liked, they are going to be appreciated, very strange. Another observation that I've also made is that we miss to see things that we should say. We condemn instead of complimenting. When you do this, we end up losing opportunities. Have you seen people who go up to the meeting? They're supposed to speak up, they're supposed to say something, but they just say, "I will not say." I've learned this. And anybody who attends meeting, every time when you go to a meeting, seats of influence, you sit on seats of on positions of power, and you simply don't say anything, even when they are saying bad things. The failure to speak up, your mind is a sign that you've agreed. So observe that we feel we need to say, only that we do not know the best way to say it. Sometimes we are there, the discussions are flowing. You don't know whether this is the best time to confront, whether this is the time to inject, whether this is the time to rise up and say, I object. The whole issue of timing the people. And then number 4, I've also observed that for others, we know what we should, when we know what we should say, but we simply say we are going to say it tomorrow. And the reason why we postpone is because we are not very sure whether a time is right there for you, because it will teach you. It will actually teach you to say hard things in a soft way. And we hope also to provide guidance on what to say and how to say. The most important thing is not what you say, but how you say them. That is very important. What you say doesn't really matter, but how you say it, the messaging, the repackaging, the rewarding, that is the most important thing. And by the way, the difference between failures and winners all comes on how. Now, as a matter of interest, let's learn to the book of Proverbs. We'll read verse number 1. It's a very interesting passage there. Would want us to read that. But a harsh stars. Let's read that. A kind answer soothes angry feelings. Okay? But harsh words stirs them up. We read it in another version. This is Marketplace Media, an online platform that engages, equips, and encourages believers to say, leader needs to be soft. Some version uses the word gentle. But that means we need to avoid, as leaders, we need to avoid. It is against a backdrop of a world we know people are angry, people are hurt, people are easily offended. And so the temptation to respond in a rude, in a harsh, in a hurting manner is very high. Now, but if you look at what the author says in the book of Proverbs 15 verse 1, he provides us with this advice that we need to respond, we need to reply in a different manner, and that is a soft answer. And that means we need to respond without sharp points that can hurt. You really need to ask yourself, even as you communicate, are my words hurting? Do they have sharp points, that can hurt others? As you speak, you need to think about, let's think about oil. If it's pressed on a bruised skin, then that helps heal. When we put on fire, it makes the fire to grow. When you use sarcasm of a soft reply, what we end up doing is that we end up winning the argument, but again we lose a friend. Now, such kind of thinking is both expensive and foolish. And the book of Proverbs actually says a gentle answer will calm a person's anger, but an unkind answer, what will it do? It will instigate, it will make that person to be angry. If you look at Jesus Christ, actually he lived to the truth of Proverbs 15 verse 1, because Jesus Christ, when he insulted, especially when you look at the cross, when the soldiers spoke ill about him, when they insulted him, when they abused him, when they did all sorts of manner to make him angry, Jesus Christ, instead of revenging, what he did is that he spoke forgiveness, and anger. Let me tell you something very, very important. We need to learn this truth, not slowly, very fast. Okay? We need to learn this truth that people, we really need to understand that. Now, having said that, let's ask of Jesus. You know, because even as we speak, we need to speak like Jesus. Number one, his speech was pure. Jesus did not have filthy words. Filthy words did not come from his mouth. Number two, in his conversation, he did not belittle others. He did not hurt. He did not wound. You know, Jesus Christ never exposed people. He always spoke words that are, affirmed, but down others. Instead, we see Jesus praising, but down others. Instead, we see Jesus praising others. A good example is the Syrophoenician woman. She was praised. The Roman centurion felt good when Jesus affirmed his faith in public. And then number four, very important. Jesus also used his tongue to rebuke James and John and even Peter. Why? Because when they went the wrong way, Jesus Christ did it in a loving manner. And so if we are going to use our tongue in a good way, in a way that is going to honor and not hurt other people, then we must imitate Jesus Christ. This is Marketplace Media, an online platform that engages, equips, and encourages believers to say